We have talked about how building cars has long been the bedrock of Ontario's economy, but some automakers have been reevaluating where, how they build vehicles, given everything that's coming from Donald Trump. Workers at Brampton's Stellantis Assembly Plant have already been off the job for about a year. Now that pause looks like it's going to be longer, and some are wondering what it means in the long term. Lana Payne is the president of Unifor, which represents more than 2,200 workers at that Brampton plant. Lana, good morning.
Morning, David. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you. I know that the shutdown was for a different reason before all of this tariff talk. But now that there is all this tariff talk, now that businesses are reevaluating their plans, what goes through your mind about the future of building cars in this province?
I mean, everything right now is very concerning, David. It's concerning for our members who have been going through a retool period like our thousands of members at Brampton. And by the way, not just directly who work in the plant itself, but feed the plant. We have a lot of auto parts members who are also impacted by this. So it's a lot of people and a lot of jobs. And what I would say is that there's a really dark cloud right now over the entire North American auto industry as a result of what we're experiencing. A number of factors here that if you're interested in chatting about, but for sure, the company itself is doing an internal review. Mm-hmm. Some of that is related to its own particular circumstances. It's seen a decline in sales over the last number of years, so they're looking at how they can change that up. But there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, because we talk to these companies on a regular basis, that the Trump effect is there, and the impact of his threats are causing all kinds of turmoil in the industry, and not just the auto industry, of course.
Indeed, but when it comes to autos, we keep being told, well, it's so highly integrated, you can't just flip a switch and say, oh, well, we're only going to build American cars in America from now on. But that doesn't mean that these companies can't stop making the billion-dollar investments in Ontario. It doesn't mean that they can't plan for some future where they don't build cars here. And I wonder among your members if that is a fear.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear among auto workers right now all across Ontario. And the reality is that, while it's not easy to shift gears, as you've just said, in terms of stopping retooling, moving on, starting production up in another place, it's not easy just to build a plant overnight. The reality is that we have to have constant investment in these plants. It's not just about the product of today. It's about the product 2 years from now and 3 years from now and the next generation of the vehicles that are being built. So, it is a fight every single day. Every time we go to the bargaining table, it's a fight to keep product in Canadian plants. And we were successful in 2023 bargaining to be able to do a lot of good work. We've had some setbacks. We've pushed back since then to make sure that we're protecting these jobs in Canada, because they are an important part of the manufacturing base throughout our country. And the reality is, any disruption to that industry will cause pain south of the border too. Absolutely.
Let me talk about the Brampton plant in particular, because it's Jeep Compass vehicles that were being made there, or are to be made there. But this shutdown, of course, has been going on for quite some time. And it's both the gas and the electric variety of the Jeep Compass. Well, we see what's happening south of the border, the rebates likely gone on electric vehicles there, the automakers sort of pulling back on some of their more ambitious plans around electric vehicles. How has that contributed to the ongoing shutdown at the Brampton plant?
Yeah, I mean, markets for sure always play a factor in the auto industry. The fact that we're looking at regulatory and policy change south of the border is definitely having an impact. But the reality is, for the Detroit Three, or these three big automakers in the United States. They have to play the long game. We have been advising them to play the long game. There are many companies, particularly, if you look at China, that are much further ahead of them when it comes to building and producing electric vehicles. So they have to catch up right now. And the reality is, if they don't make these investments today, they're going to be caught in the future. And other countries who've made the kinds of investments that we've seen in other places will eat their lunch. And so they need to stick with plans to build EVs, to build affordable EVs, and to make sure that they're in that market space, or they're going to get this will come back to bite them.
Of course, all of this centers around the tariff conversation, and I don't know what's going to happen. I say that having heard from Donald Trump earlier this week saying the tariffs are indeed coming next week, but we have at CBC News heard more directly from the White House saying, well, when Trump said that, he wasn't speaking specifically about Canada. Doesn't mean we're off the hook, but also doesn't mean that it's next week. All of it to wrap up and say, when we had Flavio Volpe, who heads the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association on a month or so ago about this same topic, he said, well, look, if and when the tariffs go ahead, auto assembly in this province could shut down within a week. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, and not just in this province, but across North America. That's how integrated it is. We would be looking at the most massive disruption to one of the biggest industrial bases in North America, and within a week for sure. But I mean, David, you saw during the pandemic, we relied on, just as an example, bolts from a factory in China to build engines at one of our plants here in Canada. We couldn't get those bolts, and that plant was shut down. So very quickly, if these compounded tariffs, which is what we're looking at, because the ones on aluminum and steel, which are, that product goes into vehicles. So you're looking at multiple layers of tariffs, raising the cost of vehicles through the roof, but also making it very difficult for some of these auto parts companies to operate. So the industry would shut down upon itself.
Lana Payne, we will keep in touch with you. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it too.
That is Lana Payne, who is Unifor's national president, speaking about the automotive industry in this province broadly, but particularly about the Stellantis plant in Brampton, which has been shut down and looks set to be shut down quite likely for the rest of the year.